Welcome to our meditation circle. The circle which has no circumference and whose center is everywhere. That's what it's like when we go deep into meditation and we realize that we are drops of an ocean of all consciousness. Our horizon expands from the narrow to the universal. Meditation helps us improve our concentration, our memory, our focus. It reduces blood pressure. It helps us to be calm and to forgive and forget. In other words, meditation is a tool that helps us to become better human beings. Meditation allows us to know and experience that we are not just the body and not just the mind, but we are the conscious entities that are having this human experience. I was thinking about art and the Western approach to art and the Eastern approach to art. I had an art gallery back in 1966. It was my first little business. It was called the East West Gallery, and it was dedicated to displaying art from both East and West. Most Western artists approach art more from an egocentric base. I'm going to create a great work. I'm going to be a great artist. I met a Chinese artist who was a master of his craft, and he would spend about half an hour just preparing his palette. He would just mix some black ink and some yellow ink, and he'd have some little bit of orange ink, and he'd be preparing that. And then he'd take his brush, and it was poised over his paper, rice paper, and he'd go like this. He'd hold it up there, and he'd go like that. And there's a perfect butterfly's wing. And he'd do the same thing again. And this was in 3 colors, all loaded on one brush. And he'd hold it up again, like that. Another perfect butterfly wing. Then he'd paint the body of the butterfly. So in my readings, I came across an account of the old Chinese artists. And I think it's also extended to Japanese art as well, where the artist who would study under a master, and the artist would be an apprentice. But one of the exercises that was expected of an artist was to go out into nature. And you've seen sometimes these beautiful black and gray and white calligraphic, usually of nature, showing mountains with mist and things like that, and waterfalls and gorges and things like that. And then there, on one side would be the calligraphy, which would explain what it is and words, and then would have the seal of the artist. But so before doing that, the artist had to go out and spend as much time in nature to lose himself or herself. And only when they had experienced a kind of emptiness within would they be permitted to go and paint. So it's completely opposite of the Western approach, which was more ego-based, and the other one was more humility-based. Now, the advantages of both styles of art, of course, Eastern and Western, and within that, a multitude of different types of art. I spent the first few years of my life as an artist. And then I gave it up for almost 50 years to build a business and to build a family and to build a community. And now in my old age, I've taken up art again and trying to approach it from a point of view of telling a story. And I know that the best art that I can produce is when I'm not trying to do it to impress somebody. I'm only doing it to express beauty, to be a vehicle of something that flows through you. I think, having met many great musicians, we've sponsored many musicians coming to Canada. Um, in the past, Nature's Path has sponsored concerts and things like that. And in all cases, almost every case of great art, great music, great poetry, great painting or sculpture is produced when a person loses their own individual identity. So people say, "Well, I'm afraid if I if I give up my identity, who am I? That would be a terrible thing, you know." But actually, it's a great thing. If we can become empty from within, then we can become a channel for something that's higher than ourselves. And it's similarly in meditation. If we sit in meditation with an egocentric perspective, I'm going to sit for so long. I'm going to do this. I'm going to focus my mind in a certain way, and I'm going to achieve certain things. And I have these expectations of myself. Well, in order to really experience Satori, which the Japanese term for enlightenment, um, would be, again, to empty the self. Sometimes in the Japanese system of meditation, zazen, they're given a koan, uh, a word or a series of words that might not even make sense, but the purpose of that is to, again, exhaust the mind. And then when the mind is exhausted, we become open to higher possibilities. The great is in the small, and the small is in the great. When we look at the stars at night, or we see the world from a broader perspective, we see that we're just a little tiny little speck in the universe. And yet we think everything revolves around us, that we are the sun around which everything revolves. But when you stand under the sky at night and you see that there are millions and billions of galaxies and planets, and there's no end to it, then we get some sense of our own perspective. And it's in such a state of emptiness or of humility or receptivity that we can receive. The only thing that stands between us and God, according to the mystics of the East, is the mind. The mind and its desires, its cravings. Desire is like an itch. When you scratch the itch, the itch sometimes becomes unbearable, and you scratch the itch, and it's very pleasant when you scratch the itch. But as soon as you stop scratching, you've made it worse. So it's not a cure by scratching the itch. Uh, we are our desires are endless. Our desires for one thing or the other really kind of stand in the way of our own consciousness and our own liberation, as it were, or freedom from the thraldom of the lower self. But we each possess a higher self. Meditation is like the peeling away of the layers that cover our innate light. According to Hindu philosophy, I'm talking about the meditation side of it, not the outer rites and rituals and worshiping gods and goddesses. Now, strip all that away. It deals with the self and the overself. You could call the overself as the creator, and the smaller self as Atma. Atma meaning the self or the soul. Paramatma, which means the supreme soul of the universe, which is the creator of all things. So it is said that the Paramatma dwells within the Atma, that the supreme soul dwells within our soul, or our soul is within that. It's like we're a wave of the ocean. The ocean is not the wave, but the wave is of the ocean. And when the wave falls back into the ocean, it becomes one with it. Just like the sun is there, it gives life to everything. And we are like particles of that sun. And that power of the atom is within us. In fact, the light is the power of the atom. It lies inherent within every atom in the universe. And consider how many atoms are within our body, billions of them. And so we are like particles of energy. According to quantum physics, matter is not solid as we think it is. It's actually composed of particles of energy, particles of energy. And I think meditation is the way that we are enabled to experience that energy, that sparkling power that's inherent in all that is. And it is our good fortune to be born as human beings, regardless of our outer denominations and our color or our age, our gender. All of these are meaningless to the spirit or to the soul. So when you strip away the different covers that imprison or darken, as it were, the light of our soul, the first cover that covers our consciousness or soul is the physical body. And that seems to be very solid, of course. If you cut it, it will bleed. It's born, it grows, it eventually dies. But there's something in that body that is conscious, that is eternal, immortal. It doesn't die when the body dies. Then there's another cover over that light, our inherent light, and that's our mind. And then there's another cover over the soul, which is our emotions. And these are corresponding to inner stages of the spiritual journey. We call there's the physical plane, and then there's astral plane. The astral world is where we go when we dream, and we have all these weird dreams, which are kind of the result of our subconscious mind. They come to play as we dream. And we think they're real as we're dreaming them, but when we wake up, we realize, oh, thank God, that was just a dream. In dream, we experience dream pain. In dreams, we experience dream pleasure. But when we wake up, we realize they're not real. They're phenomena, just passing phenomena. But what is real? So the causal region, which is beyond the astral plane, is what they call the place or the region of causality, where everything came into play, everything came into being. But beyond that are higher spiritual realms. As it is said in the Bible, in my Father's house, there are many mansions. There are many stages to the journey that we all must undertake. Mullah Rumi, the great Persian mystic, he said some 700 years ago, he spoke of 5 maqams, or 5 stages, or 5 regions. This corresponds to what Guru Nanak, who was the founder of the Sikh tradition, and Kabir. Kabir and Guru Nanak were contemporaries some 500 years ago. And they spoke of 5 spiritual regions, beginning with the physical body, and then the next would be the astral plane, and then the causal and the supracausal, and all the way up to the supreme consciousness, supreme being. But it all begins within the body. And our soul, they say, which was a part of God, a drop from the ocean of all consciousness, entered body in the womb of the mother, and it took its place at the seat of the soul, which is between and behind the 2 eyes. So the very process that brought us into this world, when we leave the body at the time of death, the soul leaves via the root of the eyes. You know, what first happens in the death process, the spirit current withdraws from the extremities of the body, from the feet first and the hands, and then it spreads upward through the body. And then when it reaches this center here and the soul leaves the body, then the eyes upturn and they say the person has died. In meditation, we learn to overcome death. We learn the process of dying while living. Not a death that takes us to the grave, but one that takes us to super consciousness. And we get experience of that eternality, which is the true condition of our soul. But we have to cross the bridge. We have to cross the bridge from this phenomenal to the noumenal. The noumenal, or the numinous, that which is self-luminous. We are self-luminous. We are those luminous beings that have taken on various bodies, you know, the physical, the astral, and the causal bodies. And these bodies cover the light. So the first thing in meditation, so we're going to sit for meditation, is to still the body and see if we can rise above physical body consciousness. And to do that, there's 2 stages, which, you know I repeat this every week, but repetition, it's important that we accept that the process of meditation, of stilling the mind and rising above our physical body consciousness, is to still the mind through a process. The process of repeating a name that we hold sacred, and the other process, which is fixing our attention, our inner gaze, into the middle of whatever we see lying opposite to our eyebrows. And that at the seat of the soul, also known as the third eye or the single eye. So please recite any name that you feel comfortable with of the divine, which you can use as a tool to still your mind and to ward off or to prevent worldly thoughts from entering in. So it's these world bombardment, as it were, of worldly thoughts that prevent us from experiencing this higher noumenal state, our original state. And so by repeating a name, a sacred name, which excludes worldly thoughts, and by focusing the attention, which is called the surat, which means the soul and the attention of the soul, we focus it within. We first need to still our body, very still, so that it doesn't disturb us. So we should sit in a comfortable position in which we can sit for the longest time without any distraction whatsoever, no movement of the body. I mean, you will breathe and your heart will pump blood. That's normal. You just let it go on normally. You don't put any attention on your heartbeat, and you don't put any attention on your breath. You can take a few deep breaths at the beginning, but then you forget your breath. And then you get engaged wholly and solely in the meditation practice. And if you do that successfully, you will have great peace. You'll experience great joy. You will, instead of darkness within, you will see light. You will experience light. You will be the light. And time as we know it will cease to exist. You're giving a flight to the soul. When we begin to see the light within, we start to experience what's called unfettered consciousness. Unfettered means it's not bound, it's boundless, boundless energy. You're identifying with that, no longer identified with just the body and the mind. So the more the coverings are removed, the greater the light within us shines. And it's a transformative experience. So meditation can help transform your life. So I thank you all for joining today and wish you a happy week ahead. Try to find some time every day to sit for meditation. You will get the benefit from it.
Thank you, Arran.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arran.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you so much.
Be well.